News special report. Breaking news this afternoon out of Johnson City. Crews are on the scene right now of a parking ramp collapse onto a first floor. Action News is also on the scene. The parking garage is on Baldwin Street, right across from Wilson Hospital. And right now we are giving you a live look at the scene. At 3:21 this afternoon, 911 emergency dispatch reported an entire level of a parking ramp collapsed onto the first floor of this garage. Now, from what we can tell right now, this is the street level that collapsed. According to dispatch reports, Baldwin Street is completely impassable at this point in time. It is unknown if anyone is trapped at this time as well. Action News does have a crew on the scene. We will continue to bring you updates as more information becomes available. Of course, check our website, WBNG.com, as well as Facebook and Twitter. We will be back with more information as soon as it becomes available. Stay with us. Crews are on the scene right now of a parking ramp collapse onto a first floor near Wilson Hospital in Johnson City. Again, this parking garage is on Baldwin Street. That is right across the street from Wilson. Our Stephen Adams now joins us live from the scene with more information. Stephen.
All right, Caroline, I don't know if you can hear it or not, but there's a helicopter going overhead right now. We're hearing it here. We're at the Wilson Medical Center emergency patient parking, where the top level of this two-floor parking structure collapsed around 3:25. Now, this is still very much an active scene. Nobody has given us official information of any kind just yet. What I can tell you is Johnson City Fire Department, Union Ambulance, Binghamton Fire Department, and a mobile command center are all set up, ready to treat anyone that may need help or have been inside. We can see stretchers set up at this point, ready to treat any patients, but we don't know yet if anyone was in that garage at the time. Now, there was a near miss. Wallace Cram, if you'll step right over here for me, Wallace. Wallace is the mother of Deputy Mayor Jared Cram, and she and her husband had a near miss not long ago. Wallace, can you tell me what happened?
Well, my husband had gone out to get some drinks for my brother-in-law, whose wife is in the emergency room, and he pulled into the parking ramp probably less than 5 minutes prior to the collapse of the structure. We watched it happen from down at the lower end of that roadway there. Our car is right at the end there, and the concrete is completely on top of it.
What did it sound like? Describe what you heard.
It was like just a very loud noise, very loud, and then the concrete just kind of buckled, came down, and then there was just a whole thing of like a concrete smoke, and then everything just settled and it was over. It didn't even seem like a minute. It seemed so quick we couldn't believe it. And then we ran toward it, of course, like everyone was doing, got up quite close to it, which was probably not the best thing we should have done, but then the people started coming out from the hospital and trying to get everyone to stay across the street. So.
Could you guys see anybody inside? Were people going to help?
No, people were trying to get close and were yelling, is there anyone in there? Is there anyone in there? Hoping if there was someone to call out, but no one called out. We didn't see anyone, we didn't hear anyone, and no one responded to the calls, as people called in, not wanting to go into the structure, of course.
Now, Wallace Cram, the mother of Binghamton's Deputy Mayor Jared Cram. Wallace, thank you so much for joining us. Now, they're literally putting up a police line right behind us as we're talking. I'm getting pushed towards the camera right now. Mayor Deemy, Johnson City Mayor Deemy, is here at this scene. Even he doesn't know what's going on yet. They're just trying to get as much information as they can. And of course, as soon as they know, we'll bring that information to you. For now, reporting live in Johnson City, Stephen Adams, WBNG TV. Action News.
WBNG TV. This is Action News at 6.
An entire level of a parking ramp for UHS Wilson Hospital collapses onto the first floor. Parking ramp located on Baldwin Street, right across from the emergency room entrance of Wilson Hospital. Action News has been on the scene since just after the collapse that occurred around 3:20 this afternoon. UHS Public Relations tells Action News it has no reason to believe that anyone was injured, but as a precaution, the Pachano wing was evacuated. Our Stephen Adams has been covering this collapse all afternoon. He's been on the scene talking with people and witnesses, and he joins us with an update. Stephen?
Candace, we do have new information to tell you this hour. We just finished talking to County Executive Debbie Preston and Johnson City Mayor Deemy just seconds ago. They told us they've instituted a localized state of emergency that's between Corliss Ave here and Main Street. It's basically a square block here in Johnson City, and they're asking people to stay out of the way. If you look behind me at what's going on, construction vehicles are now in the area. I can now tell you what that drilling sound we heard earlier was. That was a jackhammer. There was a car there that they thought may have had somebody in it, so they drilled down to check. No word yet on what the results were there. At this point, though, they're waiting for a structural engineer to arrive. That structural engineer will tell firefighters and first responders where to look, where to go, what to do so they don't cause any more collapses at this time. Again, the Emergency Field Operations Unit is on scene. Johnson City firefighters, Broome County sheriffs, and state police are also here. Now, just a little bit earlier, we spoke with Deputy Binghamton Mayor Jared Cram. His parents were here at the time. They were nearby. His mom told us what she heard.
Like just a very loud noise, very loud, and then the concrete just kind of buckled, came down, and then there was just a whole thing of like a concrete smoke, and then everything just settled and it was over. It didn't even seem like a minute. It seemed so quick we couldn't believe it.
Now, as you just heard Wallace Cram say there, she couldn't believe it. And that's the vibe we've been getting from all the other bystanders who have been here, too. The scene has definitely slowed down a bit, quieted down, but they're still very much working to make sure everyone here is okay. For now, reporting live in Johnson City, Stephen Adams, WBNG TV, Action News.
Thank you, Stephen. And Action News spoke with several other people on the scene who witnessed the collapse or have their vehicles parked in there.
The middle part came down. The other end, I don't know if it came down or not. I was frightened. And that's the truth. I was scared to death. I was very, very frightened. But the middle part, the cars came down with the concrete, and it was nothing but dust.
My Harley Davidson is in there. I decided to ride my Harley to work today, and there's a spot for motorcycles, and of course I parked it there, and there it is. So I have no idea as to, the condition that it's in at this point, but that's sort of inconsequential.
And again, UHS Wilson is operating as normal with the exception of one wing evacuated as a precaution. Again, the garage on Baldwin Street collapsed onto the first floor just after 3. And according to UHS, there's no indication anyone was injured. At least one witness told Action News people went to the garage and called out, asking if anyone needed help inside, and they didn't hear any responses. Broome County Sheriff's Office asking people and traffic to stay away from Main Street in the area of UHS Wilson. And the county also says that Baldwin, Arch, and Harrison Streets are closed right now. Fire, police, and village officials on the scene had no immediate information. There's no indication of what may have caused the collapse at this time. Action News will continue to bring you the latest information online, and again tonight on Action News at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock.
It has been just over 6 hours since a parking ramp collapsed at Wilson Hospital in Johnson City. But crews are still on the scene surveying the damage and figuring out what comes next. Our Stephen Adams has been covering this collapse all afternoon. We send it out to him now in Johnson City, where he joins us with an update on the situation. Stephen.
Caroline, at this time, police and fire crews don't believe anyone was injured. A search dog sent from Albany went through the rubble earlier on and didn't find anything. There was a scary moment for Johnson City Police earlier when they say they heard a running car underneath the rubble. Firefighters drilled through the top layer only to find the car was unoccupied. Police tell me they believe that car had a remote starter that activated when the second floor of the parking structure came crashing down. Police and firefighters also used license plates to identify car owners and call them to make sure they weren't trapped inside. At this time, officials do not believe the collapse is suspicious.
I wanted to make sure we could rule out any kind of criminal activity or incendiary device causing it. I did briefly hear the structural engineer say that it did seem to be structural failure and not any kind of, intentional criminal activity that brought it down.
A structural engineer evaluated the damage, and construction crews are now working to shore up the building. A state of emergency is still in effect and we're told will last 5 days for Harrison Street, Baldwin Street, and Arch Street. Now, in all, about 20 cars were damaged. They still have streets closed off here, like I said, but the hospital now is back up and running.
All right, Stephen, and as we've said before, this parking lot is right next to Wilson Hospital. Now, is it normally just used for the hospital?
Yeah, that parking garage is normally used for emergency patient parking. Now, amazingly, there were actually offices beneath that parking garage, and miraculously, no one in those offices was hurt.
Now, we said it's going to be a 5-day state of emergency. Are all of the roads that were closed to the public this afternoon still closed tonight?
Yeah, they expect Arch Street to reopen any minute. As for those other streets, they need them so ambulances can get by and do their regular duties here at the hospital. They're going to keep working to get those streets open gradually. They do ask that if you're driving on those roads to not park on the side of them so you don't obstruct the emergency vehicles that need to get through and go to the hospital.
All right, thanks so much, Stephen. As the investigation continues into what caused a parking ramp to collapse near UHS Wilson Hospital in Johnson City, Action News has obtained photos that show a new view of this damage. These aerial pictures were taken after the collapse yesterday afternoon. The call came over 911 emergency dispatch at 3:21 in the afternoon. The ramp sits on Baldwin Street in Johnson City, right across from the emergency room entrance to Wilson. Baldwin Street is expected to remain completely closed until early next week. The parking ramp that collapsed yesterday is now coming down. We bring you updates tonight regarding the collapse and the cleanup in Johnson City. Our Scott Cecina now joins us live at the scene with more. Scott?
Caroline, a lot of questions have been raised following the collapse of this structure here in Johnson City. But most concerning is the question that hasn't been answered, which is when was it last inspected? So far, no one has been able to give us that information. Now, WBNG found out the structure was built in 1980, making it close to 35 years old. Now, the information came from the Geographic Information System, or GIS, of Broome County. It is unclear the last time this information was updated by Broome County. According to UHS, the private engineering company Klepler, Hahn & Ha is responsible for inspecting all of UHS's buildings, including this collapsed parking garage. Construction crews have been working constantly since Thursday afternoon to clean up this mess, and people passing through here seem to be in a state of disbelief.
Shock. I was really shocked and really hoping that there was no one inside. So I was very thankful to hear, as the news reports came out, that there was nobody inside there.
Now, some questions that remain are, what will UHS do with the claims from the drivers who were affected by this collapse? When was the inspection last made? And finally, what caused this structure to collapse? Now, WBNG will continue to search for these answers. Until then, reporting live in Johnson City, Scott Cecina, WBNG TV, Action News.